ready, then we can hand over to Fiona to introduce our first speaker. Thanks.
Just 1 second. I'm just quickly going to end this poll and share it.
Oh, okay. Yes, we've got polls.
There you go.
No lean polls.
Oh,
Did
and it's Friday.
we get the answer? Did we get the answer to the somewhere else?
No.
On my chat now. Someone was just being, I think, cheeky there.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to hand over to Fiona.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Nolene. Thanks, Natalie. Welcome everyone to day 2 of the Geological Society Project Management Day. In this session, we have 3 talks. And like Natalie said, if you'd like to ask questions, please feel free to do so on the chat. Or you can raise your hand, or if you can't find the raise a hand option, if you unmute your microphone, we'll see you there as well. Our first speaker is Warwick Fuchsloch, who works for Afritin Mining, is a geologist at Afritin Mining, following the completion of his PhD. And today, Warwick's going to talk to us about the geological perspective of reigniting the world's historically largest open cast tin mine. So over to you, Warwick.
Okay, good sharing. Everyone see that?
Yeah, we can see it.
A big thank you to all our speakers yesterday. We had a lot of great detailed talks about the ins and outs of project management and project geology. Today, my talk is a bit less refined. There's a lot more pictures of rocks. But basically, I want to share with you the case study of the UIS project in Namibia, how we implemented all of these different facets to basically carry out an exploration program over what was once the largest tin mine in the world in the 90s, which has been dormant until now for the last 30 years. So here's a lot of things I need to tell you, so now I've told you them. And basically, this is the outline of my course. As I said, we're gonna look at the case study of UIS. We're gonna look at what are pegmatites and why they're important, because that's what they were mining at UIS to extract tin. And we're gonna look at pegmatites in the Namibian geological setting. And then I'm going to go into the case study and talk about the exploration cycle and how we did it at UIS, basically going from planning to stock exchange compliant resource reporting. And I just want to say that all exploration is unique. I consider this an atypical program just because we had a lot more information to start with that generally you don't have during exploration. And it's because there was an operating mine on this deposit for 30 years. A bit about me, I did my PhD on these pegmatites, so I was the right person for the job. And this program was is the culmination of me and Tim Murray, who's our exploration manager. So it's just the two of us in a junior mining company. So often we fill many different roles in the different aspects of exploration. I've been the junior geo, I've been the senior geo, I've been the project geo, I've been the environmental person, the compliance person. It's just about getting a lot of experience in a lot of different roles. So just to show you what we were doing, we were basically going from this low level model over here to a very compliant resource that has been thoroughly drilled in just 2 years, while simultaneously building an entire mine, going from an empty piece of earth to construction of an actual mine. And normally you'll hear from other guys that this process can normally take up to about 10 years. And it's not very often done simultaneously. Normally you do the exploration first and then you go and build a mine after many feasibility studies. So let's look at pegmatites. What are they? The pegmatite is actually a texture, it's not a rock type. It just so happens that 95% of the pegmatites are granitic in composition, only 2% of which are mineralized. The textures that you'll be familiar with are these very large grain size. You can see the giant spodumene crystals on the left, and a graphic texture, which is an intergrowth of quartz and feldspar, or quartz and other minerals like tourmaline. Two unfamiliar textures would be aplytic textures, which are layered basically very fine-grained plagioclase units within the pegmatite, and directional crystals such as comb-structured tourmaline you can see on the edge of this rock growing inwards towards the center of the pegmatite. And these textures basically equate to different processes that are unique to pegmatites. And the main ones are constitutional zone refining, undercooling, flux and water-bearing magmas, high viscosities, and rapid crystallization. If you want to read more, I suggest this paper by David London, titled Rare Element Granitic Pegmatites. And in roughly 4 hours, this will give you an absolute great overview on what they are, and why they're important. Why do we like them as exploration geologists? It's because they're rich in incompatible elements. And even though there's many theories about this, the main one that people tend to go to is that the pegmatites are daughter products of granites. Granites fractionate and concentrate incompatible elements in their residual fluids, and then essentially secrete out pegmatite magmas, which intrude into the crust and crystallize pegmatites. Now, this is an ongoing thing. As granites crystallize more and fractionate more, later secretions of pegmatite become more and more rich in incompatible elements and intrude further into the crust. So often you'll see a sort of halo around a granitic body of more enriched pegmatites the further you go away from the granitic body. Some of the elements include tin, tantalum, tungsten, uranium, beryllium, lithium, rare earth elements. Essentially, if you can think it, a pegmatite somewhere on the planet concentrated it. However, generally pegmatites are very small, so often not mineable. What you're looking for with pegmatites is not grade, you're looking for volume. Here's a couple of Southern African examples. You can see there's a very nice pegmatite belt in Rwanda. In the Manono pegmatite in the Congo reaches 300-meter intersections at 1.44% lithium. That's probably the biggest pegmatite in the world, over a 13-kilometer strike. You have your Zimbabwean examples, which most of us are familiar with, and then the Namibian examples such as UIS and Rubicon. And you'll notice here, if you know your African geology very well, they tend to be concentrated in mobile belts, which brings us to the Damara origin, which is a Pan-African aged mobile belt which assembled during the assembly of Gondwana when the Congo Craton, Kalahari Craton, and Rio de la Plata Craton collided in orogenesis in a triple point somewhere near Swakopmund. And basically what you're left with are a whole lot of metasedimentary tectonostratigraphic zones, you can see in the different colors here, which is intruded by multiple granites and then subsequently pegmatites. The pegmatites are grouped into these belts running from north to south, and they're also known as the northern tin belt, the central tin belt, the southern tin belt. Here's a bit of a closer look at all the mineral occurrences across these different pegmatite belts. You can see there's a lot of historic mines. You'll be familiar with Rossing, which mines uranium from pegmatites. You'll be familiar with the Rubicon, which mines lepidolite from pegmatites. And then you can see here we are in UIS, in these little green boxes. There's Afriton's 3 little mining licenses over the UIS project. Here's the Cape Cross UIS pegmatite belt. And this is essentially the entire field area that I studied during my PhD. And essentially what we have is 2 northeast trending metasedimentary zones in the origin, which are intruded in pink by multiple granitoids and subsequently pegmatites. And here's the little town of UIS, which is approximately 120 kilometers from Henties Bay here at the coast. Here's a zoom-in image of the honed-in image of the UIS SWARM. And you can see I've mapped out all the different pegmatite intrusions at surface in orange. And in red here, you can see all the pegmatites that were mined in the past for approximately 30 years. So you can see there's quite a lot of potential left for expansion and many more other ore bodies to target. You'll see that they intrude in cymoidal shapes, likely due to the extensional events during orogenic collapse of the origin in a transtensional environment.
Sorry, Warwick, can I just interrupt you just briefly? There's some boxes at the top of the screen that's sort of obscuring your titles and things like this. I don't know if that's how, is anyone else seeing it like that?
I just keep on getting notifications to admit people to the waiting room.
No, on the slide itself, the top of the slide is being obscured by the grey boxes. Nolene, are you seeing that, or Natalie?
Just maybe try share your screen again, Warwick.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone is seeing it like that. Yeah, I think it's maybe if you just stop sharing and then try and reshare.
And now?
Maybe it's a memory issue. Maybe let's turn off the video as well, if you don't mind, Warwick. Let's see how it goes. I think it's refreshing a bit slow. It might be because of the size, because you said you had a lot of images. I'm not sure. It refreshes slow on our side.
Okay, so if Warwick turns off his video, it might help.
How are we doing?
It's not, I mean, it's not obscuring the main body of the slide. So I think maybe we carry on. Oh, it looks like it's gone. Okay. I think Sifiso's right. It's to do with the size of the slides. Sorry, Warwick, you can carry on. Thanks.
No worries. Okay, so a bit about the historic mine you can see in the background. This is essentially an entire mountain that was built out of that is the result of the tailings of mining the ore bodies for 30 years. It's a great place for a sundowner now. And basically, it was operated by a company called ISCOR from 1965 to 1991. And at peak production, it was processing 180 tons of pegmatite per hour, which at the time was the largest tin mine in the world. They recovered 80% of the tin-bearing material, which is cassiterite. And right near the end of the life of mine, SRK declared a 70 million ton resource over all the pegmatite bodies in the deposit at a grade of 0.136. However, it's important to note that this resource was non-compliant. Just honing into the V1, V2 pegmatite, which surprisingly held 40 million tons of those 70 million tons that SRK declared. And what actually happened is that these pegmatites were very small at surface when ISCOR mapped them. And they turned out to be the largest pegmatites in the entire swarm at depth. So they would have targeted this if they had known that in the beginning. When they started drilling, they only discovered how large these ore bodies are. So they actually left a lot of it behind. And due to that reason, this was basically the lowest hanging fruit in the deposit and was subsequently our target. So from here, you'll hear me more talking about the V1, V2 pegmatite. This is an example of the size. You can see here's my CEO right in the background. And essentially all the white rock is the pegmatite, and it has intruded these brown metasedimentary schists. You can see it's dipping quite gently, in this case to the west. And the mine